Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you for this last session of the Social Innovation and Global Ethics Forum 10th edition. This session is about a topic which is paramount, more and more visible in people's life, more and more shared across, all media and all stream of thoughts. This is about, the future of our planet. This is about the future of humanity and how we can walk all together from all walks of life. I'm very privileged today to be welcoming three great women, three great researchers and activists. And let me, share you some of the achievements and the work that they are doing. So first of all, we are done by Naomi Klein. Naomi is a leading professor in Harvard University. She is a writer, she is a researcher from a journalist background. She has dedicated her passion for history to work on climate history and Earth. So we will be learning from her insight how science can be, supportive of finding the solutions of tomorrow in that specific question and challenge we are facing with climate. We are as well joined by Sophie Wing-Peterson. Sophie, it's a pleasure to see you back from last SIGEF we had, I think if I remember correctly, in November. Sophie, we see you as an element, very strong element of youth, activist for climate, for youth empowerment, and a being that is, willing to serve the generation you belong and the generations to come as well. So in that capacity, we would be very happy to learn from your perspective, your side, and what you are doing. We are joining as well from Paris, Clara Latini. Clara is a policy specialist. She has been involved in many initiatives like OECD, think tank, and World Economic Forum Shapers, and many other activities. Clara is what I call a passionate public servant from the new generation, and definitely promise to a very bright future, helping us to find the solutions of tomorrow, and helping convey and facilitate how the dialogue can be done between I would say governments, international agencies, and as well the private and public sectors. So let's get started. My first question for the three of you is: we are now having a major news, which is having back the United States in the Paris Agreement. Do you see that as a positive? Is it maybe capable to bring more impetus and more momentum in really gathering, the work of every nations to build solutions regarding climate and of our common future? Naomi, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And it's a pleasure to be here with these wonderful young women and you. And I certainly am obviously very happy that we have had a change in the administration in the United States, that Joe Biden has brought the United States back into the fold, as it were, of climate commitment, and that we have John Kerry, who's been a consistent leader on this issue for so long. Sorry, I don't know what that is. I apologize for that interruption. So clearly we're in a much better place today than we were a few weeks ago. But that said, I think anyone who's been watching this issue for the last 5, 10, 20, 25 years has seen the way the United States has been an unreliable partner, and how the US gets buffeted by the pressure of the fossil fuel industry, who are very powerful in the United States, and other right-wing organizations and think tanks that have consistently acted time and time again to derail the US commitment to climate action. So I think we've definitely taken a step forward. It's definitely good that we are back in the Paris Agreement. But I also think the lesson here for the rest of the world is that the rest of the world can't just sit back and expect the United States to solve this problem, because that is not going to happen, in my opinion. The rest of the world has to step up to the plate, take leadership. And if the US will not participate or will not help, then the rest of the world has to move forward and not be held back, not be held hostage by the peculiarities of American politics.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you. So, Sophie, you are, like in the roots of the EU and the dynamics of the European Union in that aspect, being, related to the government of Denmark, that is supportive of your climate council. So, what are your thoughts about that? Is it something positive? Do you see it as a catalyst, or is it just like, as Naomi say as well, Europe has to stand for and has as well, to be an engine of innovation in that regards to bring solutions forward?
So obviously it's great to have the United States back in the Paris Agreement, but it's a statement, as you say, but it also needs to be followed up by action. And already the consequences by not taking action on the Paris Agreement are quite weak. So it itself, just joining back in the Paris Agreement, is definitely not enough. And we need both as the EU and the United States to work together as two great nations and a lot of population to actually get this momentum going, implementing a lot of different reasons, probably doing our targeting towards how we trade across the United States, EU. If we can align that in terms of climate or CO2 fees, stuff like that, that could be amazing. It's a whole new perspective that's opening up that we can collaborate with the US on.
Thank you, Sophie. Clara, we know that you have been closely involved with Angela Merkel on some work and some exchange. What are your thoughts about that? Is Angela our best hope in EU?
Well, thank you for mentioning that, but I must admit that I met her only in the capacity of representing Italy as a youth delegate for the G20 a few years ago. But yeah, that was a great experience to discuss with her and also with the G20 Sherpa and other decision makers regarding the pressing G20 priorities, and of course, climate change was one of that. And I think not only Germany, but I think the European Union is on the right path with the EU Green Deal. So I think that we're going to the right direction. I think we need to work on, two different levels. So first of all, to continue, working with multilateralism. Of course, I'm very happy that the US is back. And also with the new administration, it seems that they will, follow more sustainability policy also on a more domestic level. And similar also in the EU. So it's not only, we need to take for granted that international organizations or international efforts are making new partnerships, but it's also really important that decision makers in our countries are changing something. That's for also really grateful for lots of young and youth activists that are really marching for sustainability. I think that was a really great advocacy tool to engage the media and also decision makers to protest and be involved at the same level to move forward to sustainability.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you very much. Before we go forward for the future, I would like to take the opportunity, to leverage the expertise of Naomi. Naomi, you are renowned for being the expert into history of the Earth. this is absolutely, when I read your profile, when I look at what you do, I say that person, I want her to be my friend, so she can teach me a lot. You know, you have the knowledge. You know, like you studied what happened on the planet. You are the one that can, you know, like tell those people that are having doubts about, you know, like the movement, the change in terms of climate, or in terms of oceans, or in terms of the problems we have on the warming of temperature. So Naomi, with all your research, and you wrote some books on that, what are some of the key takeaways you could tell those people that are maybe agnostic, or I would say, you know, like a little bit more skeptical about, you know, like this aspect, which honestly, if you are someone that like the sea and are a Mediterranean or some different part of the world, you see that there is a warming up. It's clear. There is no doubt about that. But some of them are still skeptical. What could we tell those people to be positive and to bring them with us?
Yeah, thanks. Well, that's a great question. Of course, I think about that just about every hour of every day, since, as you said, this has been my work for a long time now. So there's a few things I like to say, but I think I'll start by just saying the science is clear, but the politics are murky. So let me elaborate a little bit on that. The science of climate change is crystal clear. We have known for more than 150 years that carbon dioxide is what we call a greenhouse gas. That simply means that if you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it warms the planet. And a little bit of carbon dioxide is a good thing. The fact that our planet is habitable is partly because we have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Without it, it would be too cold to even have life on Earth. But like many things in life, there can be too much of a good thing. And so we have added substantial amounts of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere because of burning of fossil fuels and cutting down of forests. And scientists predicted more than 100 years ago that if we did this, the climate would warm up and it would have dangerous consequences. So that prediction has come true. So I write a lot about science. I've written very detailed books about science, but in my experience, many people, even people who don't know much about science, understand the idea of scientists making predictions and then seeing if those predictions come true. So I find that when I emphasize to people that all of this was predicted 100 years ago, before Joe Biden was ever president, before Barack Obama was ever president, before we ever had an IPCC, before we had a UN Framework Convention, way before any of the politics, scientists predicted this, and it's come true. But as I said, the politics are murky. And they're murky for a number of reasons, but the most obvious one is that we have very powerful economic interests who have made huge fortunes off of burning fossil fuel. They're the wealthiest, most powerful corporations in the history of humanity. And like a lot of powerful people, they don't like it when people say, well, hold on, there's something wrong with what you're doing. And so they have fought tooth and nail. And they have fought this issue for as long as we've really, well, since the science settled. So scientists predicted this back in the early 1900s, but it was in the 1980s that we began to have evidence that was actually happening now, and in the early 1990s that the scientific consensus emerged. And that's why we have the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, because as the prediction began to become true, political leaders said, oh, this is serious. This is something that could hurt a huge number of people, and we need to attend to it. And as soon as that happened, as soon as political leaders began to say, maybe we should do something about this, that's when the fight began. And we have been fighting this ever since. So the other thing I like to say to people, I have good friends, people I trust and respect, who say, well, the fossil fuel industry needs to be a partner in this. To me, that's like telling an abused woman that she has to stay with her abusive spouse, right? This industry has been abusing us for 30 years. They have lied, they have spread disinformation, they have attacked scientists, they have attacked me. So why should we think that we could trust them now? And until such time as the industry really makes it clear, opens up their books, makes it clear that they are no longer funding disinformation, which we know that they still are, until that time, I think the burden of proof is on them to prove that they can be trustworthy partners, because what they've proven so far is that they cannot be trustworthy partners.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you very much. And to prolong that, when you look at the empirical evidence, I know you are in your methodology very much, for empirical steps. What are the, maybe again, some key takeaways from empirical elements, especially knowing that you are a geologist, you understand those aspects, which most of us don't expect. When we say geologist, people think, okay, what is the diamond? Where is my gift? But except from that, people don't have a clue, maybe only in schools. It goes back, to many years for me as well. So the point is, what are the takeaways from empirical evidence, from geologist aspect, from the Earth's history that that we can tell, again, this is the change that is happening?
Yeah, well, there are many different things we can talk about, and depending upon people's interests, but we know that the temperature of the Earth has changed. We have good satellite data that goes back to the 1970s. We have instrumental records that go back to the 1850s, and we have what are known as proxy data, other forms of geological information from tree ring studies, from ice core studies, from coral reef studies. These now go back 1 million years. And all of these data agree that, yes, the climate varies. Yes, natural variability is part of life. I mean, the world varies. We all know that. That's not a radical observation. But the changes we have seen in the last 30 to 50 years are dramatically different from the natural variability of the previous 1 million years. This is the famous hockey stick work that the IPCC featured back in the 1990s. The temperature record kind of goes like this, da, 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 and then it goes like that. And that's not natural variability. There are other things we could talk about depending on how technical people want to get. Sometimes people ask me, well, how do we know that the carbon dioxide isn't from volcanoes? The answer is from isotopes. So the carbon, the type of carbon in the carbon dioxide is different when it comes from fossil fuels than when it comes from volcanoes. We can measure that. Carbon isotope measurements are something I used to do in my days as a scientist. Not that hard. You have to be careful, but it's not that hard. We've done that work. So whatever question people ask, whether it's about natural variability, whether it's about the source of the carbon dioxide, scientists have done this work. And I'm happy to talk to anybody at whatever length they'll put up with about the details. And so is practically every other scientist I know. I mean, scientists are happy to talk about their science. Scientists like to talk about their science. So again, this is not a problem of science. This is not that we don't have sufficient scientific information. This is that we have powerful vested interests refusing to accept that information because of what it would mean for their industries.
Naomi, thank you very much. And I would like, maybe Sophie and Clara to comment on what you say, because this is about knowledge. This is about knowledge that is accessible, that is empirical, and we are still having, a challenge to make it happen. And the reality is, as you say, it's a money, it's a dollar, euro, it's a currency, aspect. That is, why we are not, making the right choice. We could make the right choice tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow it could be made. We could say we are going, to have all the industries of car to go for favoring electric car in a way which will be sustainable. We could make, some choice tomorrow or next week. Of course, there is a time to execute on that. But the decisions could be done tomorrow because there is actually a quite realistic consensus on the reality of those aspects and topics. So, Sophie, what are your thoughts about that? And how could we help maybe to combine knowledge and as well empirical, practical decision-making process, including the use into that, because you are at the end of the day the ones to live or not with the aftermath of our mistakes. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I remember back in my primary school days, one of the things that really helped me understand kind of the horror of this was looking at mass extinctions, where you also quite look at the early history of the Earth and what happened there, where you had the increase of 2 degrees in the temperature, which resulted in mass extinction, and that the simple science tells us that if 2 degrees happens now over 100 years, then something might happen. So that was kind of at least the framework that got me started on climate change. I think what you're pointing out exactly, that youth needs to be part of the solutions, but also the debates, both because we have more innovative ideas. Also, we haven't grown up with the same, like the need to have fossil fuel cars or a lot of stuff like that. So we're more innovative, more able to change our perspectives, more willing to take on new technology, industries, way of doing things. And at the same time, then it's us that's going to live with the future and the future state of the earth. So we have this motivation. We can even look into 2050, which is kind of like the end point for climate neutrality that we're all talking about. And to us as a youth, it seems much more realistic. Also, that we're going to be the major part of the workforce at that point of time, which makes it such important that we include it in the political discussions as well. I'm part of the National Danish Youth Climate Council. So we've 14 people at the moment, 14 young people, working along with the Ministry of Denmark of Climate, Utility and Energy, to come up with solutions and to recommend solutions to the minister on how we can do. And our solutions tend to be a bit more radical than the traditional politicians, but we actually tend to be along with the same recommendations as the scientists come up. So we have a adult climate council as well in Denmark, and our alignments suggestions seem to align. So youth just seem to be aligned with what is necessary, which can be hard for the politicians to actually realize that something as radical needs to happen.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you very much. Clara, what would you like to add on that?
Yeah, so no, thank you both. It was both very interesting points on that. I think we have two issues that we need to focus on. So, for example, first of all, nowadays there are still lots of climate deniers, and we don't see only related to climate change deniers, but also related to fake news regarding COVID-19 virus and etc. And just I can give you like a really fresh example. I was just reading the newspaper the other day, and unfortunately in Italy, in nowadays, I think around 14% of people don't believe anymore in the Holocaust compared to 1.3% in 2004. And I think, it's still like another example of a lot of people that behave, probably don't believe in the Holocaust, don't also believe in what happened with the pandemic and also to climate change issues. So I think it's also, first of all, we need to address a lot about fake news and really focus a lot how we can improve education. So not only, at university. So like, I know, like, for example, in my capacity with the UNSCSN Youth, we work a lot with university. I think we need to really start earlier. So I can remember when I went to elementary school and somehow we had some workshops with an expert that was teaching us how to do, recycling. And I think it was 2001. So it was quite innovative for that age. But, I think that would be really important to address climate change or sustainability issues in our school curriculum. And I know Italy has started doing this since last year. And after, education, also fighting fake news. So yeah, generally just really important to make sustainability choice is also cheap. And this sounds really trivial, but I always bring another example. When I used to live in London, I just wanted to visit Scotland, and with the train would be the best options is only 4 hours. I don't need to go back and forth and go through security. So first of all, it just saves a lot of trivial issues, and at the same time it would be better than taking a flight for CO2 emissions, but the cost was crazy. So for example, I can remember that a Ryanair flight was probably £40 and the train was around £400. So again, I didn't go to Scotland because I didn't have time, but this kind of example really stick to my mind. So do we really give people options to be sustainable? Because I think a lot of low income or middle income families are really struggling right now during the pandemic, and they just want to have the means to arrive at the end of the month. So I think that's there are lots of issues that we should cover, but probably this is really tough questions for the government. For example, if they want to, subsidize a certain sector, invest, for example, in transportations. I think in Europe, we can seriously build a lot of trains and just avoid taking flights. Okay, now we have a pandemic and we're not flying a lot, but really this example really kind of shows how deciding to be sustainable is not so easy for a lot of people, and that lot of people means probably the majority of cannot, for example, afford an electric car instead of a really old car that is going to be bad for the environment. So really strongly still advocating for governments to really fund on this sector.
So, Sophie, you want to react on that?
Yeah, we actually saw the French government doing a great responsibility on that action in terms of COVID. So they provided these help packages for starving companies, and they actually made the requirement for airplanes in France for them to receive this payment. They had to stop all flights that were on this short period within France. So I think it was that trains could reach within 3 hours or something. So that was quite a great initiative that could actually brought. Unfortunately, they didn't do it in Denmark. So yeah, kudos for that at least.
Thanks.
Sure. No, I think also, for example, in Italy, the government is trying to subsidize buying electric cars. But I think it's just important to think about these issues, just to make creating really easy for people to make sustainability choice would be better. Would be like a better solutions for everyone.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you very much. On what you say, you made a comment that lead to my next question. It's about the relationship of this pandemic and as an accelerator or as like a decelerator factor in terms of taking the right decisions in regards of climate aspect. So we have seen like dolphin back to the coast. We have seen in Venice, the water being transparent. We have seen that in China, where it was like clouded by dust clouds, the sky was shining and beautiful. So we are suffering from a human perspective because of the sadness of all the problems that are health problems, socio-economic problems, at many level problems and challenges with this pandemic. But when we look at it at the same time, we see that it looks like Earth is taking a moment for breathing. So Naomi, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is a great point, and it's obviously a complicated one, because on the one hand, it's a really great lesson to remind us that the Earth does have tremendous capacity to rebound, that nature is all around us, but most of the time we pay no attention. So here in the United States, many people have been talking about hearing the birds in their backyards. Of course, those birds were, for the most part, always there, but most people were too busy running around or going to work or whatever it was they were doing it to even hear and appreciate the beauty and the miracle, really, of birds. And of course, birds are close to my heart because that was the metaphor that Rachel Carson launched Silent Spring with, right? What would it be like to wake up in the morning and hear no birds sing? So this year has been a useful reminder to us that nature is still there and wondrous and beautiful and can recover, and it's not too late. And that's a really important thing for everyone to know. That said, we obviously don't want a global pandemic to be the way we recover nature, and we don't want a collapse of the world economy to be the way we do this. And this is where it's so important. I want to underscore what Sophie and Clara have already said. So important to remind people that we have solutions in our grasp. So climate change is difficult to talk about because by and large, it's a bad news story. It's a story about death. It's a story about loss. It's a story about pain, and most people don't want to hear bad news. But the good news in this story is that the solutions exist. The technologies to fix climate change already exist. They're here now: solar, wind, electric cars, energy efficiency. These things all exist, and they are all affordable. We can do this. And in my experience talking to politicians, this is the single most important thing we can tell them, because as most of you know, and you've worked with politicians, you know this, they worry constantly. Number one is the economy. It's what James Carville said. It's the economy, stupid, right? It's about money. It's about the economy. It's about jobs. And that's okay. We don't want to tell politicians that they're wrong to be concerned about jobs and the economy. No, but what we want to tell them is that there's a good news story about building a green economy, building jobs, good jobs, jobs that can't be outsourced, jobs that have dignity, jobs that people feel good about doing. And in the United States, the green energy economy is the fastest growing sector of the economy. It kills me that I don't hear people, you know, on my side, so to speak, saying that all the time. I mean, I have said this when I have the opportunity to talk to politicians. Jobs, 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 green jobs, good jobs, union jobs, jobs that can't be exported. And we're starting to hear that message here in the United States. I haven't been following the debate in Europe as much this year. But that's an incredibly important message for us, because sometimes the anti-environmentalists want to claim that we are anti-people, that we don't care about people, that we only care about polar bears. Obviously, that's nonsense. We wouldn't be doing this work if we didn't care about our fellow human being. But it's really important for us to put front and center a vision of a growing, prosperous economy, happy and healthy people, whether they're on trains or in electric cars. This can all be done. And the other thing I want to say also is that it has everything to do with policy. So, you know, we just heard mention about the issue of trains versus planes. It's not just by accident that we have the situation we have. The railway systems of the world were almost entirely built by governments or public-private partnerships in the 19th and early 20th century. It wasn't the private sector that gave us railroad travel by and large. I mean, they participated, but it wasn't they weren't the primary driver in most cases. And for a long time, railroads were subsidized because they were viewed as a public good. But then that changed starting in the 1970s, 80s with Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, the whole rise of neoliberal market fundamentalist policies. And we were persuaded that somehow it was a mistake for governments to fund railroads and we should just let the private sector take care of it. And in Europe, the net result was this massive shift away from train travel into airplane travel. And frankly, I saw that shift and it broke my heart because it used to be one of the things that as an American, I loved about Europe, that you could get around by train and it was easy. As you said, Clara, you didn't have to go through security. You could go to sleep. I mean, I had the experience of, you go to sleep in Italy and wake up the next morning in Germany and you've had a good night's sleep and you're ready to go. So here's the thing. Some people will try to claim that it would be a distortion of the marketplace to try to fix that. But of course, the reality, as we all know, is that fossil fuels are massively subsidized. They are subsidized both directly, indirect subsidies that governments give to promote the fossil fuel industries, and colossally, indirectly, through the unpaid external costs, which the IMF, not exactly a radical left organization, estimates at over $1 trillion every single year. This is a gigantic government subsidy to the fossil fuel industry. So one of the things I'm very happy about is that the Biden administration has already said that they intend to try to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. And if we would do that globally, then trains would be able to compete again on a level playing field with planes. And so many of these things don't require more government subsidies to the renewable industry. They simply require the government to stop propping up what is essentially a failed industry, which is the fossil fuel industry.
Well, Naomi, thank you very much. And what I like in your statement, it's people's understanding of value and wealth, because that's unfortunately the dialogue that most of the people understand nowadays. This is actually on the side of the good. It can be done the good way. It can be done the good way, and actually, this can be, beneficial for a vast majority of the people on the planet. And so this is like the great story about it. So I would like Sophie and Clara to react on that. And then my next question, and you can think of that, Sophie and Clara and Naomi, but is there a risk of splitting the world in two? Because that's the other problem we are facing. We are facing that with the pandemic. We see that with the vaccine. One part of the world will get it, and what happened to the other part of the world? In 2030, they're going to get the vaccine. So what's the point on that? And same for climate. What is going to be happening? It's like, are we going to have some part of the world where climate is good because we have been able to have the budget or repositioning the things? And what happened to the rest of the world? So what are your thoughts, Sophie, on that?
Yeah, so if I should go into the split of the world, sometimes it's possible to believe that a country like Africa or like a continent like Africa could really exponentially grow by targeting new technology, by simply skipping the state that we're in Europe right now, where we're just exploding out with fossil fuels and going fully electric. They could go even faster with implementing of trains and simply skip a full step ahead and come forward within this run. But we can also see the opposite happening, that climate change will target them first. That's the simple matter of fact of climate change, that we are the ones in the western part of the world that are simply emitting these fossil fuels, and it's going to affect the southern part of the world the most. With climate change, more excessive weather, all that, making it hard to even do agriculture. That's the simple bread for a lot of people in those countries. So yes, it's indeed going to be quite a lot of trouble, but we can do a lot of help, and that might be the simple responsibility we have in the western part of the world to actually build some of these technologies and then to bring them to the southern part of the world without taking the big win on it economically, simply to build up some companies down there or whatever, and help in that way, help in whatever way we can from governments. That's the major thing that we can actually do, especially as a country like Denmark that's so small. We can do huge stakes going to help India and Africa and all of that. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do even on positive view if we just want to.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Clara. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to comment on what Naomi said, and it's true. In fact, like for example, I mentioned the case study from the UK, and the UK has been totally, train travel, it's totally private. So it's true actually that we need to address also not only the government, but the private sector. But somehow I'm quite optimistic on that, because I think that what the SDGs have done in the past years, there were this really massive advocacy campaign, and somehow even if you go to Davos, everyone has a sustainability pin. So I'm really glad that no matter which tool, if you make sustainability cool, it's fine. Whatever your you make a sustainability event in your company, or for example, if you're like marching for, like for example, young students for Fridays for Future. So no matter which approach you're using, I think it's always great and honorable that people are showing up for fighting climate change. And regarding your questions, that's very tricky in the sense that I think our society is really polarized at the moment, and this will probably increase. We can see that from elections results, and that's scary. I need to be honest, that's really scary, because probably 20 years ago, majority of people were voting for center left or center right parties, and if I need to be honest here, if I just look, for example, at Italy, there is no center right. There is the right. It's formed by people from extreme right, like for example, Fratelli d'Italia and Lega Nord. So I think social media really played a huge role on that. Again, I'm not talking only about climate change deniers, but when I saw this data about people not believing in a Holocaust, that's really troubling. And again, we should really take action on this and really fund a lot for give funding for schools, and starting from really elementary schools, and how to address also this pandemic. And because at the same time, probably now, as I said before, people are just trying to make ends for the end of the month. They want just to survive right now, what's happening. And probably they don't want to hear, about sustainability, etc. But at the same time, we have this pandemic because of, biodiversity issues. So, and we're literally living like in a movie right now. I don't know if you saw that movie. I forgot the name, but like from 10 years ago, it really explained the situation we are living right now, and even now, what's happening with the vaccines is not the right it's not like the right policy manner to address this issue. So we see the vaccines are being divided mostly to, I think right now, Israel, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the UK are leading right now worldwide. And we see a lot of low-income countries that we don't know even if they're having vaccines next year. For that, I know that with Professor Yunus is launched a campaign regarding making vaccine, accessible for everyone. So I want us to advocate for this great campaign. Already 100 decision makers signed this campaign. So first of all, I want to praise his work right now. And secondly, it's again a rule of multilateralism, and it's really complicated when we see the situation regarding vaccines between the European Union and the UK, and with Brexit in the past years. So what I'm hoping, I'm not sure I can give such a simple solutions at the moment, but I don't know. I just want to see reasonable people in politics. Right now we are discussing Italy to put so-called technocratic government, and I don't want this because we had already won after the financial crisis, and after this government people tend to vote for even more extreme parties. So I just really want reasonable people in power. I'm not talking about my own country, but also all over the world. I just want people, not saying I apply for a party, but at least to be informed, read newspapers, and somehow lobby for good causes. So that's what I'm really hoping that that people are doing.
Yeah, could I respond to a couple of things there? I just really want to underscore what you just said, Clara, about the importance of political engagement, because in my own life and experience, I've worked with a lot of scientists who don't want to get involved with politics because they see politics as messy and dirty and science is clean. And I understand that, but I think it's a luxury that we can't afford. We all have to be involved, and we don't have the luxury to say, oh, I'm not interested in politics. Politics is our lives. And we actually, I think, all have obligations as citizens to become engaged, because so much of this in the end does boil down to politics and policies and how we can elect the right officials and educate them and persuade them to pursue policies that will benefit us all. I also want to just say something about the Global South. And obviously, I don't want to speak for the Global South. I think one of the big lessons of the 1960s era development models is that when educated white people at places like Harvard, where I teach, tell the rest of the world what's good for them, it generally doesn't go well. So I think that, one of the lessons of history is that, we who think we're so smart and so educated need to be humble and practice, what people now call active listening when we're in conversation with our fellow citizens from other countries. That said, though, I think we have very good evidence to refute the claim that the Global South needs fossil fuels, right? We sometimes hear that. We sometimes hear the fossil fuel industry even try to say that somehow we're hypocrites because we're denying to them the riches and the support and all the luxuries that we have. But I think the evidence is very clear. The Global South does not need fossil fuels. They do need energy, but that's not the same as fossil fuels. And as Sophie pointed out, we have good evidence to suggest that in many parts of the Global South, distributed energy, the sort of energy that you can do locally with wind and solar, is actually more likely to be better for community development than it would be if they had centralized energy based on fossil fuels. And there's a lot of evidence now to support this. And I'll just give one example from my own life of something that I got to participate in. A couple of years ago, I got to go to Ladakh, India, with folks from the Global Himalayan Expedition who I met through WEF. And I took a group of 8 students from Harvard, and we went to Ladakh, to a totally remote, extremely, extremely remote area in which people had never had electricity. the Indian government has been promising since Nehru that they were going to electrify Indian villages, but they've never done it because centralized energy is really, really hard to bring to remote areas. It's very expensive, it's very difficult, and there are a lot of obstacles, cultural, political, technological. But we carried in solar panels on horses and helped install them, helped the villagers install them. And one of the great things about this program is that then they trained the villagers to do their own repairs. And this is extremely important because if you travel in the global south, in Africa, Asia, India, wherever, one of the things you see that's very striking, and I really noticed this as a historian of science and technology, is the discard remains of technologies that were given to people by wealthy people in North and Europe, United States, and then they broke and nobody knew how to fix them. And that was the end of that. And you see this stuff everywhere, like old abandoned satellite dishes. But if the people in the communities can be educated to fix the stuff themselves and to maintain it themselves, and maybe to get microfinance, have a community bank to purchase repair, things they need for repairs, then it can be sustainable for them. And then they don't have to, it doesn't perpetuate the cycles of dependency that the fossil fuel industry and other global northern corporations have tried to perpetuate. So this has to be the model, and this is a win-win model, a technology that can work both in the global north. So if we want it here in the United States, we can have big offshore wind, and that's fine, and it can feed into the grid. But people in Ladakh can have solar power on their roofs and give them the electricity that they want and not be dependent on anyone else.
Naomi, thank you very much. Sophie, Clara, you want to react on that?
Probably, yeah. Honestly, I also wanted to mention your topic, but because it's true, I hear it a lot. I also studied social policy. Yeah, I had some social policy courses and also development during my master's. And yeah, I remember my professor were always trying to be very careful on, on the same issues. And I think it's true also in the humanitarian sector. I think that's a real problem because the money still comes from the same people probably as 50 years ago. From called white man in their 60s or 50s. So it's really hard to change that dynamic. But I think right now, first of all, it's true that for example, Asia is probably, if not really like stronger than Europe in terms of GDP, at least of annual growth. And I think also there is a lot of research and innovation going there, and I see that even in this exchange that I have with people. It sounds really trivial, but I don't know. I know so many friends from India, and so many people are entrepreneurs in India, and I think they're even more than either. Just the level that they have about technology innovation, I think it's even greater than Europe, and I think that they really let us rethink a lot about the path for the future. So on that, I'm also quite optimistic, as also Sophie said, in using technology for sustainability. First of all, for creating new jobs, which is really a critical issue at the moment. And I also really hope that the universities are creating new degrees on that. I remember once I met a person that studying like a relative master regarding the oil industry, probably like 10 years ago, when the market actually almost collapsed, and he had literally to reinvent himself. So I think this is also probably the year that not only probably everyone in our lives, we really needed to rethink about our lives, and this I had to, but I think society really needs to think a way forward, not to go backwards, because anyway we weren't following the right path, at least not on a sustainable level.
Clara, thank you very much. I will ask each one of you the same question as we are getting closer to the conclusion of this passionating and dynamic session. Thank you very much for your contribution so far. If you have a message for the citizen of the world, the decision maker of the world, what will be this message? Naomi, what will be the message you could share with us and with them so everything can be going in the right directions going forward?
Well, it's a tough one, but I think for policymakers, I think I would reiterate what I just said. the solution to this problem exists. And the only ones who want you to think that's not true are the fossil fuel industry. They want us to be locked into 19th and 20th century technologies, but the technologies of the 21st century are here, and they work, and they're affordable, and they create jobs. And I guess the second thing I would say, that's the good news. And the bad news is that historians will judge you. History will judge you. And I'm writing that history right now. And I'm paying really close attention to what everyone is doing.
Naomi, we want to read the book. We want to read the book. We want to read that one as well. Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you very, very much. Sophie, what will be your message as well?
I would definitely put a strike on inclusion of youth within policymaking, especially because it's the future, but also because you need new and otherly or innovative ideas for it, and it can be done in lots of different ways. But as an example, the establishment of a youth climate council in whatever country or even on a local area just would propel these decisions as well as new input of ideas momentously. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Clara, what will be your statement?
Yeah, I think I would, I really want to remark again what I said before, to really focus on being political engaged, no matter in which capacity, to join a party, to create a new one, but generally just to, even, when we say at Christmas, dinner or lunches, be careful, don't talk with your uncle or, another relative about politics. Okay, no, that's wrong, do that. Like, even discuss about, important issues during your Christmas lunch. That's my main take. Yeah.
Laura, we look forward to have you at the top of one party. Same for Sophie. We want you guys to be political leaders, going forward. That's what we want. We want you to stand up, and you and all the other ones that wants to serve and to do it in a different way, which will be more inclusive and more hopeful. And us, we are here to support. Naomi, we are here to support. So Naomi is supporting with knowledge, wisdom, research, and we are trying to support with putting you forward and helping the connections, and many others can support. But at the end of the day, we need a new generation of leaders and decision makers. We need you guys. We need you to stand up and step forward. And if we can have as well, like more women in that process, then the cherry on the cake will be, like a complete. It will be a vegan cherry, and it will help change the world. So thank you very much, Sophie, Clara, and Naomi. It was enlightening. Thank you for making the time, and we look forward to the continuation of our discussions going forward. Thank you very much, all, and we will start in a few minutes the concluding remarks. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be with all of you.
Thank you.